The relationships that we build with people is a little bit like a bank account. There are so many people want to make withdrawals, but they don't often make deposits. And part of that process of building that trust is making those emotional deposits, not necessarily being transactional.
A good salesperson is always going to be a genuine person. They're going to be authentic with what they have to do. And the more genuine you are and the more authentic you can be in your brand, in your persona, in your product, the better off you're going to do.
So what was the biggest F-up you made? What was the biggest mistake you made in your career? Oh, there was this time when I did this. Oh my God, was it embarrassing? Oh, it was terrible. Have you done it again? Oh, no, I haven't. So why are you stopping your leaders from getting that learning?
Mic drop.
As a leader, you need to be able to create the space for your team to be able to make mistakes that aren't costly to learn from.
Yes.
And not have that fear of going through and doing that.
Situational leadership is so important. There are phases that people go through. And if we're not providing the platform for people to actually have a go, to make the mistakes, to learn from the mistakes, we don't want to set people up for failure, but we do need to have an opportunity, because often when we have those moments, that's where we really retain them, like those mic drop moments. Oh my God, I'll never do that again. Tyler, we're so pleased that you've joined us over at the Life Puzzle team. And I know that, like me, you share a passion and a real understanding for the fact that sales is a really important skill, not even just for sales professionals, but in particular for people who want to be influential with their teams, etc. So
That's right.
what's one of the things that you're seeing in terms of people's responsiveness to sales at the moment? What are some of the common things that happen in the marketplace?
Sales obviously gets a bad reputation from time to time. A good salesperson is always going to be a genuine person. They're going to be authentic with what they have to do. And the more genuine you are and the more authentic you can be in your brand, in your persona, in your product, the better off you're going to do. You're going to build that trust faster, better, and stronger.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the most important things in this climate. I think you're right. We say the word sales sometimes and people go,
Yeah, I know.
I'm not a salesperson.
No.
And I think it's just such a fundamental flaw, because obviously when we're working with people in whatever capacity, trust is the basis of everything. And a lot of people are not recognizing that's actually a really big part of how we build rapport and build trust and create outcomes together. So
one of the other things is people will just jump straight to trying to sell. And I think that's a huge problem. What you're looking to do is build that relationship first rather than a transactional type relationship. You want to build that rapport over time, build that trust. And again, if you're doing that genuinely and you're doing that with authenticity, then you're going to get a better outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And so obviously in your background and the things that you've done before, you've been very dive in terms of being able to manage teams, build sales platforms, build sales teams as well, and create great results for organizations. What are some of the insights, like for some of the people that we're connecting with, or maybe people who are watching along who may not consider themselves salespeople, appreciate that they need to do sales? What would be one of your key pieces of advice for someone who's just starting out?
Sure. I think it's that initial getting over that hurdle of the stigma of sales. Yes, you may not call yourself a salesperson. You may not be in a sales team or running a sales team, but if you're a business owner, you need to sell. And there's certain professions as well that you need to sell. You need to give the business, and your company may not have a sales team. And so you're it, and that's going to land on your shoulders. Yeah, really important.
Yeah, and I also think too, like a lot of people who don't necessarily, they may not be a business owner, they may not be a sales professional, but they may have teams. So we're with leaders and managers all the time in terms of that. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what that means to you, or how people could get more comfortable with that, or fire the itty bitty shitty committee?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. It's a hard job. If you're leading a team, whether it's a sales team or any type of team for that matter, it is a hard job. And obviously the further you progress, and what generally happens is the ones that are best at their role get the promotion, right? To come into those leadership positions. And potentially you've never engaged in any type of leadership training or really taken any professional development in that sense. There are aspects of leadership that are super important that most people don't get the opportunity to actually jump in and learn how to be a leader. They're thrown in the deep end, they do the best they can do, and some people get great results, have that natural ability. But it's also super important to look at professional development when it comes to leadership, to understand the fundamentals, learn how to communicate with authenticity, to build that trust, not just with your customers, but with your own internal teams as well.
Yeah, I think that's so important. One of the things that we say in the training all the time is that the relationships that we build with people is a little bit like a bank account. There are so many people want to make withdrawals, but they don't often make deposits. And part of that process of building that trust is making those emotional deposits, not necessarily being transactional.
That's right. And it's hard, but sometimes you're so caught up in the day-to-day, you're invested in getting that result, getting that target, getting the to-do list completed at the end of every single day, that you look at your calendar and you think, where am I going to find the time to invest in the team? Where am I going to find time to have that one-on-one conversation with that person that I know is struggling? I know I need to invest some time and energy and effort into that person, but you're so busy running your own race that it's very difficult sometimes to find that time.
Absolutely. So what's your top tip for people who are conscious of the fact that they need to have those conversations, but also needing to prioritize other things, which when we're in leadership roles, there's plenty of priorities, plenty of responsibility.
Yeah. And I often used to joke in different roles that I've had that I could bring the bed into the office and sleep there for 6 months and I would still have things
Please
to
don't
do.
do
No, don't do that. But that's the thing, that you will always find something to do. And so what it is to be important is to make sure that you are actually managing your calendar, you're managing your time. And if you're doing that effectively, you're blocking out time, creating a rhythm around your calendar to make sure that you have time scheduled in with the people that you need to talk to, but also allowing yourself some time. You don't want to have 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, some people every day back to back. You're going to burn out in a hurry. So it's important to have a little bit of flexibility in your calendar, making sure that you do have time to take some of those reactionary tasks that do pop up in every role. But at the same time, you've got that rhythm around your calendar. You're looking at having that consistency, whether it's weekly, whether it's fortnightly, whether it's monthly, to have those check-ins with people.
I want to change tack for a minute and let's talk about sales. I think in the context of sales, many people appreciate that sales is perennial. It's something that we'll always need to learn how to do. And there are some schools of thought that believe that sales will always be about numbers and that it's a specific set of tools that doesn't really change very much. And there's another school that sort of think the sales game is changing. And there's been really interesting conversations recently about the traditional funnel. So what's your thoughts about that? And what do you recommend for people that we're talking to?
Of course, yeah. So I mean, we've all heard it, right? Sales is a numbers game, and to a degree, absolutely, it takes
probability.
Energy. Correct. We know that the more people you connect with, the more people you talk to, the more people you're having conversations with, the more results you're going to get at the end of the day. So yes, that is true and accurate. But what is also true and accurate is that when it comes to having those sales conversations, we talked recently about the introduction of AI and all these tools that are out there. And yes, in a way, sales does change, and you need to stay on top of the game. But the fundamentals have not changed, and I don't think ever will. So those fundamentals of communication and effort and actually reaching out and talking to people in this day and age, I think the salespeople that I've had come under my belt over the years, I've seen a decline in the desire to pick up that telephone and have that conversation. And unfortunately, that's something that people are going to have to continue to work on, because that's not going away anytime soon. At some point, you are going to have a conversation. And the people that are having those conversations face-to-face or over the phone are going to get better results than those that maybe hide behind AI and hide behind some of the tools that are available out there. And that's not to say that those tools aren't useful. Absolutely. Yeah. But those fundamental core elements of communicating with authenticity, building rapport with those customers is going to be even more critical now.
I think so too. And I want to pick up on something that you said there, talking about some of the people that really struggle to have conversations. I think that as at Life Puzzle, we do a lot of multi-generational workplace training for leadership and sales. And what we've seen over the last 5 to 10 years is that the emerging leaders in the workplace are really struggling with dialogues. And I think that it's a very interesting conversation that many more senior leaders are challenged with in this day and age around the fact that technology, while very helpful in terms of increasing productivity and getting us to be able to do things in shorter timeframes, it's also represented a challenge in the context that many people are having monologues with their devices. And so they're not learning and feeling confident to actually have a dialogue and chat with each other like right now. What's your thoughts around that and what you've seen in the workplace?
Yeah, unfortunately, what you just explained there is true, and I've seen it firsthand. And the younger ones that are coming through generationally are finding it a little bit more challenging, and not their fault. They've been brought up with technology and phones.
Instant gratification
right.
of ask Google a question or
Yes, and I'll get my answer.
GPT a question.
Yes,
exactly.
Yes, absolutely. But once again, it's the core fundamentals of sales and selling. And so no matter if you're a salesperson, a business owner, an entrepreneur, or a solopreneur, those fundamental core exercises of being able to communicate with people in a dialogue rather
Yes.
than a monologue, it puts you miles ahead now. And so it's actually even more important because there's less of the population in sales doing it. So
Yes.
you get so much more of an advantage by having those skills.
I think soft skills, in my humble opinion, I think that soft skills are something that are totally underrated. And I remember reading a study recently around a test that was done in the US, and it was saying that over 70% of Gen Ys had actually lost a job at some point in time in their career due to the lack of soft skills. I know that we utilize a lot of neuro-linguistic programming in what we do. And so how do you think the impact of people learning soft skills as well as sales techniques would make a difference to their interactions and relationships?
With NLP in particular, the communication and mastering the art of communication. And again, in the landscape of sales today, the more that you can advance yourself, the more that you can learn to communicate with authority and with influence, you're going to be miles ahead of some others that maybe are not. And when it comes to sales, we go back to, yes, it's a numbers game, but if you're having those conversations and you have those soft skills, like I said, you're going to be miles ahead and you're going to get the results, and you're going to get that result, whether it's for yourself, whether it's for your business or your team. And that's what we're there to do.
Well, I can't believe it. It's been 2 years since we developed the Leadership Pathways program. That was an intense development period stage and going through and doing that. And,
Remembering the fetal position.
yeah,
Just kidding.
it's it was an interesting sort of journey. And again, it was coming through and looking at traditional NLP coaching and also how that fits into the leadership space and where the shortcomings from what you learn in NLP that doesn't necessarily map directly across there, and being able to find that gap. So it was a fun sort of journey in going and doing that. And
It was.
And in doing that, we developed effectively a 10 months program, and it's made us some really interesting sort of outcomes we've had.
Yeah, I think if I remember back to the motivation, there are so many challenges that people in business are facing today, particularly in large scale organizations where you've got multiple levels of leadership. And when we talk about the leadership pathway, we needed a way to be able to connect with the emerging generation that just, have unpracticed soft skills. They're having monologues with technology. They're claiming that they have no confidence to be able to pick up the phone and have a conversation because what if they can't prepare for the answer? And so I think it was a really fun journey to look at where obviously both very experienced used NLP in many different ways in many different contexts over the years. So I think in terms of actually taking this content to market for a variation of what we know from NLP with communication, but also looking at the way in which we're able to bring some of the business strategic skills of things like time management, communication, running meetings, meeting agendas. I think it's made a huge impact. And I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about like some of those things that we've seen where people came through the program thinking they were going to be super successful and then perhaps weren't. And perhaps some of the people who weren't as sure that they were going to be successful. What's been some of your biggest insights, I imagine?
What's really interesting is, again, some of the basic things that we take for granted, like the goal setting a goal, an outcome, people being aware of actually setting an outcome. One of the big things has been the factor of the quality of communication versus the quantity of communication. And I'm sure we've all been at some point in our time at the end of a long reply all email.
God.
Pages and ones of everyone's inbox.
Yes.
And what's been really interesting is seeing those people that identify that there is a gap in their knowledge, because no one actually learns how to manage their inbox. No one does. You don't go and do a how to manage your inbox sort of process. It's just, it happens. So people learning how to manage their inbox and also improving their communication as far as having outcomes of going through and doing that has been phenomenal. And their management of their time. And I think the big factor is you've got managers and supervisors who are managing and supervising. And there's nothing wrong with that in a certain context. But at a certain point where your team grows, they're going to move away from managing and supervising, and they're going to move into that leadership process, either because spot becomes available, the business grows, and the magnifying glass of the leadership program on the team that gets selected for that has been interesting.
Yes.
And we've had people who are right up thinking they're going to be a leader, and then all of a sudden they start understanding what it takes.
Yeah. And I think that's the fundamental thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
A lot of people think leadership or management is, I get an office and it looks like I do a whole lot less work. And some of the realizations have been phenomenal as far as that's concerned.
And then there's other people who have just eaten it alive with going, I need this. And I think the fundamental factor of the difference that makes the difference here is that the people that embrace and went for it, they stood head and shoulders above the rest of the team for the people who are looking at them as far as the emerging leaders.
Yes.
It also had a dramatic improvement in their personal life, work-life balance, communication with family, setting boundaries, managing time, going through and doing all these sort of things and having difficult conversations. And I think probably the biggest factor is that the amount of time that team have created being able to be efficient with what they're doing in order for them to have that work-life balance, in order for them to have really good, effective use of communication with team. I remember one person who was telling me, complaining about that their team aren't following instructions and telling them what to do all the time. I said, okay, so tell me, how are you telling them? And I had this customer and they weren't doing as much business as they would. So I told the person to call them to find out what's going on. And they go back, we said, is everything good? They're quiet. And he's gone, have you called them? I sent an email. And then I found that this whole conversation is going backwards and forwards with teams. And the person he needed to talk to was literally 5 meters away.
Unbelievable.
And the idea of getting up, talking to them, hey,
completely foreign, because that's something that's happening with the advancement of technology.
Yeah, and people afraid of being able to ask questions in case they don't like the answer, or asking a question and not getting a result. I think one of the classic examples where it was this new leader, he'd gone through the program, he'd been elevated into this role, and he was very much sink or swim, and he was going back to his supervisor management skills of getting in there and doing it. And very quickly his hours went up, his satisfaction went down. And I had a coaching session with him and said, what are you putting into place? And he realized that he'd become unconscious of what he was doing and slipped back to his old ways.
Wow.
And I said, I can't hand these things over. The team are too busy. I said, doing what? He's like, I don't know what they're doing. I said, how about you ask the question? So he went to one of his team members and said, I need you to do this. He said, I'm too busy. Doing what? He said, I've got these 3 things I have to do. He said, those 3 things should take you 20 minutes. What are you doing for the rest of the day?
Yes.
And he says, and he hadn't asked that question, didn't have guts to ask the question or the fear of that pushback.
And sometimes people don't even think to ask that question.
They just take it as face value of going for it. The team's too busy, or they make they're very dangerous thing of the assumptions.
Oh, yes. Assumptions make an ass out of you and me, of course.
I do. Yeah. So I think over that period of time, seeing it, and again, I think we've had I've lost track. I think we've had over 130 people go through the program.
I think the final number was 159.
159.
At multiple different levels. And so I think one of the things that I'd love to talk about a little bit was the concept of ownership. You and I have done an array of personal and professional development training, coaching over the last 20 years. And we work with thousands of people, all different walks of life, different contexts. And I think one of the things that we definitely saw a shift from some of the other projects that we've done together before is that level of ownership and accountability. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in terms of like how we went through that journey with some of the people during the program.
Well, it's very interesting. The first part of actually going through and identifying and getting their buy-in of actually wanting to do the program and explaining what the program entails.
Yeah.
That actually excluded some people quite quickly. They just realized they weren't
that's why we do it, because you've got to have that desire to actually show up.
Yeah. And the real dangerous thing when you're in the coaching environment is that the person doesn't have investment in doing it. They're less likely to buy on board. And when you're doing a leadership training, the company's got the investment. The team member, they're interested in doing it. I'll give it a go. They've asked me, I'm privileged to do this, but are they actually invested? And when we're able to articulate the value of what's in it for them and how they're able to go through and get the investment in them following the process goes up when they do the process and when they use it, and then they're applying and putting it into place. And then once they've got that ownership on what they're actually doing as far as learning the skills, that transfers into managing their team for high value activities, their KPIs, their goals, and implementing and using some of the tools. We had one very young team member who came into the business, moved from a sales environment into an operations situation, and would basically use every tool that we gave them to work with the team. And the results of the team and the team leader were the chalk and cheese as far as a very young team, inexperienced team, going through and putting things into place. And it just really showed that if you've got that buy-in, that ownership, and you're willing to do things and own it and put it into place and actually practice it and do different things and actually get a different result, it's surprising how the dollars went up, the retention went up, and everybody seemed to have a little bit more time in their day because they were busy.
Funny when people get conscious of what they're doing with their time, suddenly they have all this extra time.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting because it's a common objection and often it's not the root of the problem. One of the things that I found super interesting about the program was not necessarily, or one of the biggest highlights I think about the program in this particular project that we did was around some of the leaders that were really happy to have people bow out of the program early. And I know that sounds really strange because a lot of the time when people make investments in programs, it would be a really bad thing that somebody doesn't want to participate. And so we were having some conversations and saying, look, this is the scenario. And the person said to us, the decision maker, the leader said to us, I'm really pleased to spend and to find out for that amount of money, that person is not cut out for leadership. It could have cost me a lot more in energy, time, money, opportunity cost. And so for us, we're really happy to make that investment to actually see people, whether they can stay the course or whether they figure out, he goes, it's a very cheap way for us to figure out whether people are fair income or not.
Yeah, and it's very hard that once you promote a manager or a leader and have to elevate them and then promote them and pay them more, and they might be really good at doing their job. And then all of a sudden you'll have that conversation going, oh, well, you're not actually leadership material, and what am I going to do with you now?
Yes.
So it's a great way for them. And they get the skills, and if they use them, great. If they don't use them, then again, it gives the leader a great way of identifying it. And anytime I've done leadership training and coaching over the time with businesses, and you find leaders who have realized they've backed the wrong horse.
Yeah. And it's such a shame too, because often people that are promoted within, they have actually been really good and a star performer at something. And so for that reason, that's why they've been promoted. And then they put them into these leadership roles, figure out that it's not for them. But most businesses and most leaders don't actually know how to handle that conversation. So people either opt out because they realize that they don't have the capability, and then you've lost great talent, or worse than that, they move them somewhere else. And there's a lot of shame and emotions that come with that, and people end up deciding to head off anyway.
And let's face it, most businesses are going to promote someone and not have the time to actually grow them as a leader, because their benchmark is how good they are at doing their job. And the assumption they make is they can make other people do that better. So I think that gap we've found in the need for how to actually take someone from a supervisor, manager, transactional leadership concept into a leadership and transformational leadership is just a secret sauce. And it sounds very easy, but we now know it takes you to the guts. It goes through the process to get able to go, you know what? I'm going to stop answering every question that comes to me.
I love that. And it's so good to see that transformation take place. That leads me to think about the environment. I think it's really important to talk a little bit about how the environment always wins. And when I'm sure many people are familiar with Darwinian theory, the survival of the fittest. And I think while we look at science and all of that's it's easy to understand, but a lot of organizations don't actually think about the impact of their environment with training. So how's that made a difference, do you think, with these multi-tier programs that we've done?
Yeah, it's been very interesting. We know that when we've got the buy-in from the business senior leadership, middle management, and then the emerging leaders, the environment's very different. If we're just working with the team and trying to get them to do what they need to do, be more efficient, then what ends up happening is they go, I'm busy doing my job. And the manager goes, yeah, just do your job. Your job's leading. Now just do your job. So when we've got the people that they're able to lead up to, and they're able to lead down, right? So take an emerging leader, someone who's gone from a supervisor, manager role into a leadership role, being promoted through someone leaving the business, whatever it is. All of a sudden, they're able to show their leader what they're doing by leading up. And that leader knows the environment or what it takes to manage your time, effective communication. And so therefore, they're able to evaluate how they're doing as a leader by the way they lead up, and then seeing the results for how they lead down. If that environment's not there and the senior leadership team don't understand what's happening, they're not going to support or know it's even happening when the person is leading up and going through and doing that. They're just going to think, that's different.
Yeah.
That's great.
And I think that's the problem, isn't it? Like often we hear, and just spent a few days with some very senior level executives who work across HR departments, work across, C-suite roles. And it was quite interesting to hear the feedback from the marketplace across all different industries about the fact that the mid-tier leadership actually needs a lot of help. And I smiled internally on that because as you and I know, a lot of the time people do the handball on our emerging leaders and our mid-tier leaders really need some help, when in actual fact, the senior leaders are not leading. And it's not to say that they don't have the talent or the skills. Often what's happening is they're not actually learning how to pace that conversation. They're not delegating correctly. They're delegating by abdication. And so it becomes and this is a big challenge for us in terms of the way we work with organizations and an education process, that they think they're delegating, but they're actually abdicating. And so what happens is it's kind of like, you take care of that and tell me if there's a problem. And what that does is it either creates a dependency or a silence. And the silence is really dangerous, right?
Right. Yeah, silence is dangerous. Or worse, what happens is that the leader steps in and does the doing because they haven't actually delegated correctly.
Correct.
And as a result, the person's not learning. And one of the realizations I've had to that with those people is, okay, so what was the biggest F up you made? What was the biggest mistake you made in your career? Oh, there was this time when I did this. Oh my God, was it embarrassing? Oh, it was terrible. Have you done it again? Oh, no, I haven't. So why are you stopping your leaders from getting that learning?
That's
Kind
right.
of like, that just went straight to the dust.
Mic drop.
So, as a leader, you need to be able to create the space for your team to be able to make mistakes that ain't costly to learn from,
Yes.
and not have that fear of going through and doing that. And when there's fear, then all of a sudden all the other things fall into it.
And I think that's a challenge that we're seeing in terms of, there's a lot of stigma around micromanagement. And so there are so many leaders that are afraid of micromanaging. And so they don't teach. And so we go, okay, watch me do this thing. Are you right to do it now? Great. Situational leadership is so important. There are phases that people go through. And if we're not providing the platform for people to actually have a go, to make the mistakes, to learn from the mistakes, we don't want to set people up for failure, but we do need to have an opportunity, because often when we have those moments, that's where we really retain them, like those mic drop moments. Oh my God, I'll never do that again.
Yeah. And it's so interesting how it happens. And they want to be able to go through that process and learn it, but they just, all of a sudden, they're not there. Brad here and Tyler from Life Puzzle. And Tyler, you've had a bit of an experience in the leadership role, running businesses and in sales. Come on board with Life Puzzle and doing sales. And we've got you going through the Leadership Pathways program as well.
Yes.
So interested to see what your thoughts are from someone who's had developed team in that scenario, and what are some of your takeaways?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on today, Brad. But one of the things that I initially thought when going into Life Puzzle was, hey, I've led teams before and I've been successful, and I can sell and I can run teams, and I'm good with people and I'm good with customers. And I've always found myself naturally going into leadership positions, no matter when I got my first job when I was 16 years old. I was 2IC within a few months at 16 before I'd even finished school. Right through my entire career so far to date, I've naturally progressed quite quickly into leadership roles, running people, running teams, whether they're sales teams or management teams, etc. I thought I was doing a pretty good job, and probably wasn't doing a bad job. But one thing I'm learning, and what's really standing out to me, is there's actually so much more to learn, and there's so many things that, from a fundamentals point of view, when it comes to leadership, that that we can use on a day-to-day basis. And I wonder how frequent there's people that were maybe in my position who would naturally, hey, I'm really good at my job, I'm doing well, I'm getting results, oh great, I got a promotion, and the cycle continues and the cycle continues, and then all of a sudden you're running a company without any form of training or professional development, and you're just doing the best you can.
Yep. Learning on the job, there's a fair bit that's good about it, but obviously, again, you're obviously not aware of your blind spots and
That's
mistakes
right.
you're learning.
Absolutely.
One of the things we see with leaders and people moving in that role is effective use of management of time, how they communicate with their team, and then being able to realize that their job as a leader is to transfer knowledge and make sure that they're building the team up. So we see that happen quite a lot. But who would you identify as somebody who would really get value out of going through and understanding that, from a business owner or even an emerging leader, will get value out of the program?
In my experience, companies that I've worked with have progressed quite quickly. They've grown from either small local operations or startups, and they've gotten success. They have a good product, they have a good brand, and they've got good people. And so those companies that are growing and growing quickly sometimes just didn't get the time to really invest in the fundamentals, and didn't invest maybe so much in the people. They were just so busy keeping up with demand and what was in front of them. And that's not their fault. But at some point in time, I think it's so important that they stop, have a little think about what's going on, have a look at the people, and start to look to invest in those people to upskill them. Because I've seen time and time again, and we talked about it just before there, that people who are good at their jobs and they're great at their jobs get the promotion because it's like, this person's doing the best. We'll give them the next leg up. And then all of a sudden they're a little bit out of their depth.
Yeah, we often refer to the concept of slowing down to speed up.
Correct.
A lot of the time, teams don't actually take that time to put into place the things that they need to do. And also, you get a lot of situations where businesses grow and the growth is massive, but they're not losing, they've got no scale.
Yes.
And they've got no depth of leadership.
That's right.
And the worst case scenario, you can have some really good team members, which you think, I'm so happy I've got them. It's so great. And then they leave.
Yes, absolutely. That next person up mentality, taken from a sports analogy there, it is great to have, and it really is. But sometimes people really enjoy the job that they're doing, and then they find out in a year or two as they've been progressing and moving up and taking on more responsibility and taking on more people and, of course, more problems that, hang on, I really enjoyed what I was doing back then. I'm not quite enjoying it anymore. It makes you wonder that if they were actually given the fundamentals and that learning and that development of what it takes to be a good leader, maybe they might enjoy it a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that the headaches that they encounter are pretty much being avoided if they're putting some of the basics between teaching in place.
Absolutely. And I'm sure they enjoyed the pay rises that come along with it. And maybe that's why they continue to do it. But ultimately, everybody wants to go to work. We spend so much time going to work and everyone wants to enjoy their time. It's important that you are enjoying every single day. And when you're good at what you do and you're enjoying it every single day and you're being able to learn and develop and put things into place and grow personally and professionally, it makes a lot of difference.
Yep, I agree. Thanks, Tyler.
That's okay. No worries, Brad.